I'm going to tell you about a 20-second note I leave on my desk that changed absolutely everything about how money flows to me. And I want you to listen closely because what I'm about to share isn't theory. It isn't wishful thinking. And it certainly isn't something I read in a book and hoped would work. This is what I have proven over and over again in my own life and in the lives of thousands of people I've worked with. Most people spend their entire existence pushing against the very thing they want. They say they want money, but every word out of their mouth, every thought in their mind, every feeling in their body is screaming the opposite. They wake up worried. They check their bank account with dread. They see a bill and their stomach drops. And then they wonder why money feels like this impossible, slippery thing that's always just out of reach. But here's what I discovered, and it's going to sound almost too simple, which is exactly why most people miss it completely. The universe, this infinite intelligence that surrounds us and flows through us, doesn't respond to what you say you want. It responds to what you truly expect. It responds to the vibration you're holding. It responds to the mental equivalent you've built in your consciousness. And that little note on my desk, those few words I glance at dozens of times a day, they reprogram everything. They shift my expectation from fear to faith. They move me from lack to abundance. They take me out of human struggling and place me right back into spiritual knowing. I've watched this work when I had almost nothing. I've watched it work when things looked absolutely impossible. I've watched it work so fast it made my head spin. And I've watched it work in ways so unexpected that all I could do was laugh at how limited my own imagination had been. Let me be completely honest with you. There was a time when I was desperate. Not just concerned, not just worried, but truly desperate for money. I had been studying metaphysics and spiritual law for years by then. But when you're facing an immediate need, when the bills are piled up, and you don't know where the next dollar is coming from, it's easy to forget everything you know. It's easy to slip right back into panic. That's human. That's what we do. But desperation is the worst possible place to create from, because desperation is pure lack consciousness. It's telling the universe, I don't have. I'll never have. I'm separate from supply. And the universe, in its perfect impersonal way, just keeps saying yes to whatever you're declaring. So there I was pacing my little apartment, feeling that terrible tightness in my chest, and something inside me said, stop. Just stop. I sat down at my desk and instead of making another list of what I owed or trying to figure out where money could possibly come from, I wrote down one simple statement. Not a wish, not a plea, not a desperate prayer. A declaration. A statement of spiritual truth. And I left it right there where I could see it constantly. Within days, the strangest things started happening. Money showed up from directions I never anticipated. Someone paid me back a debt I'd completely forgotten about. A client I hadn't heard from in months suddenly called with new work. I found money in a coat pocket. Small things, yes, but they kept coming, kept flowing until I wasn't desperate anymore, until I was actually ahead. Now, you might think that's just coincidence. You might think I just got lucky, but I've done this hundreds of times since then. I've taught other people to do it, and they've had the same results. This isn't luck. This is law. This is how the universe actually works when you stop fighting it and start aligning with it. The note I write, those few words, they're not magic in themselves. The power isn't in the paper or the ink. The power is in what those words do to my consciousness every single time I see them. They interrupt the pattern of worry. They redirect my mind from problem to solution. They remind me of the truth that I so easily forget when I'm caught up in appearances. And that's what I want to share with you today. Not just what I write, but why it works, how to do it yourself, and what actually happens in the invisible realm when you shift from fear to faith. Because once you understand this, once you really get it in your bones, you'll never look at money the same way again. You'll never feel powerless again. You'll know exactly how to call forth whatever you need. Most people have been trained completely backward when it comes to supply. They think money comes from their job, from their business, from their clients, from the economy, from their parents, from luck. And because they think that, they feel vulnerable. They feel at the mercy of external conditions. If the economy is bad, they're scared. If their boss is in a bad mood, they're worried. If a client leaves, they panic. They've made these external things their source. And anything you make your source has complete power over you. But here's the truth that will set you free if you can really hear it. Your supply doesn't come from any person, place, or condition. Your supply comes from the universe itself. From infinite substance, from God, from the one source that never runs out, never gets depleted, never has a bad quarter. Every person, every opportunity, every dollar is simply a channel through which this infinite supply flows. Channels can change. Channels do change. That job ends, that client leaves, that opportunity closes, but the source never changes. The source is always there, always abundant, always ready to pour itself into your life through whatever channel is open. And here's the part that changed everything for me. You determine which channels are open by what you expect, by what you believe, by the mental equivalent you're holding. If you're walking around thinking, I'll never have enough, money is so hard, I'm always struggling, then you're closing channels. You're literally telling the universe, no, don't send it that way or that way or that way either, because I don't believe it can come. But when you shift your consciousness, when you plant yourself firmly in the truth of abundance, when you expect money to show up, when you declare it and feel it and know it, channels open everywhere. Money comes from directions you never imagined. Opportunities appear out of nowhere. Things that seemed impossible suddenly become easy. I've seen this so many times I can't even count anymore. A woman came to me once completely convinced she was trapped in her financial situation. She had a low-paying job, massive debt, and no prospects as far as she could see. Everything in her outer world said stuck. But we didn't work on her outer world. We worked on her inner world. We worked on her consciousness. I gave her a statement to write in place where she'd see it constantly. Within 3 weeks, she was offered a position she didn't even apply for at almost double her salary. A few months later, an unexpected inheritance came through from a distant relative she barely knew. Within a year, her debt was gone and she had savings for the first time in her adult life. Did she work hard? Of course. Did she take action? Absolutely. But the opportunities to take action showed up because her consciousness changed first. The outer world always reflects the inner world. This is law. This is how creation works. You don't get what you want. You get what you are. You get what you expect. You get what you believe is possible for you. So this note I keep on my desk. It's not about asking for money. It's not about begging or hoping or wishing. It's about declaring what is already true in the spiritual realm and watching it manifest in the physical realm. It's about shifting my identity from someone who needs money to someone who is supplied by infinite abundance. And that shift, that internal shift in consciousness, changes absolutely everything. Let me tell you what happened just last month. I had an unexpected expense come up, something I hadn't planned for, something significant. The old version of me would have immediately gone into fear, into stress, into that terrible mental spiral of how will I handle this? Where will the money come from? What if I can't? But I've trained myself differently now. The moment I noticed that fear trying to creep in, I looked at my note. I read those words. I felt the truth of them settle into my body. And instead of worrying, I simply expected the supply to appear. I didn't know how. I didn't try to figure out how. I just knew it would because I know how this works now. 3 days later, I received an unexpected payment for work I'd done months before that I thought had fallen through. It was almost exactly the amount I needed. You might say that's coincidence, but I don't believe in coincidence anymore. I believe in consciousness creating reality. I believe in mental equivalents manifesting as physical conditions. I believe that what you hold in mind, what you truly expect, must appear in your experience. Here's what most people don't understand about faith. They think faith means hoping something good will happen even though you're terrified it won't. They think faith is this fragile, delicate thing you have to protect and nurture and desperately cling to. But that's not faith. That's just hope mixed with fear. Real faith is knowledge. Real faith is certainty. Real faith is looking at what appears to be true and saying, that's not the whole truth. The spiritual truth is different. And the spiritual truth is what's ultimately real. When I write my note and place it on my desk, I'm not hoping it's true. I'm not wishing it's true. I'm declaring what I know is true and reminding myself to stay aligned with that truth instead of being hypnotized by appearances. Because appearances are always temporary. Appearances are always changing. What looks impossible today can completely transform tomorrow if your consciousness shifts. I've seen it over and over again. The person who seems to have no options suddenly has abundant options. The money that seemed unavailable suddenly flows. The opportunity that didn't exist suddenly appears. Not because the outer world magically changed on its own, but because the inner world changed first, and the outer world had no choice but to reflect that change. This is how creation works. Consciousness always comes first. The visible world is always the result of the invisible world. And you have complete control over your invisible world. Over your thoughts, your beliefs, your expectations, your declarations. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. You're thinking, but Florence, I've tried affirmations. I've tried positive thinking. I've said nice words to myself and nothing changed. And I believe you, because there's a massive difference between repeating words you don't believe and making declarations that shift your actual consciousness. If you say, I am abundant, while everything in your body is screaming, I'm scared and broke, those words have no power. You're just lying to yourself. And on some level, you know it. And the universe knows it too. What I'm teaching you is different. This isn't about lying to yourself. This isn't about pretending. This is about recognizing a deeper truth and aligning yourself with it. It's about understanding that the spiritual realm, the realm of infinite possibility and abundant supply, is more real than what you see with your physical eyes. And when you write your note, when you create your declaration, it has to be something that resonates as truth for you. It has to be something you can actually believe, even if you can't see it yet in your physical reality. For me, it's not I have $1 million when I clearly don't. That would just create internal conflict. Instead, it's a statement about the nature of supply itself, about my relationship to the infinite, about the truth of abundance that exists regardless of what my bank account currently shows. Here's what I write, and you can use these exact words or modify them to fit your own understanding. But these are the words that have worked miracles in my life over and over again. I write, Infinite Spirit, open the way for my immediate supply. Let all that is mine by divine right now reach me in great avalanches of abundance. That's it. 20 seconds to write. But those words contain everything. They acknowledge that there is an infinite source. They claim my connection to that source. They call forth immediate manifestation, not someday, not eventually, but now. They recognize that there is supply that is mine by divine right. Meaning it's meant for me. It belongs in my life. I'm not grabbing or stealing or desperately chasing. I'm simply calling forth what is already mine in the mental and spiritual realm. And that phrase, great avalanches of abundance, does something powerful to my imagination. It creates an image of overwhelming supply, of more than enough, of abundance that sweeps away all lack. Every time I read those words, something in me relaxes. Something in me opens. The fear dissolves. The worry fades. And I find myself expecting good. I find myself looking for evidence of supply showing up. And whatever you look for, you find. If you're looking for evidence that you never have enough, you'll find it everywhere. If you're looking for evidence that you are supplied by infinite abundance, you'll find that everywhere instead. Let me tell you about a man I worked with several years ago. He was a businessman, very practical, very logical, very skeptical of what he called woo-woo nonsense. But he was also desperate. His business was failing. He was about to lose everything. Someone dragged him to one of my talks and he sat in the back with his arms crossed, clearly not wanting to be there. But something I said broke through. I told the audience that very night, you cannot lose what is rightfully yours by divine appointment. He told me later those words hit him like lightning. He went home and instead of obsessing over his failing accounts, he started speaking a new word. Every morning he'd say, Infinite Spirit, open the way for the divine plan of my life to manifest. Let the genius within me now be released. Let me see clearly the perfect plan. Within 2 weeks an idea came to him. Not from struggle, not from desperation, but from that quiet inner voice. He pivoted his entire business model. Within 6 months, he had tripled his previous income. But here's what matters most. He said the money was secondary to the peace he found. He stopped living in fear. He stopped making decisions from panic. That's what I want you to understand. When you align with this law, life becomes a completely different experience. The universe begins to arrange itself on your behalf. Now, I know some of you are thinking, but Florence, I've tried this. I've said affirmations. I've visualized. Nothing changed. Let me be very direct with you. If nothing changed, you weren't truly working with the law. You were working against it without realizing it. You see, most people say one thing and believe another. They affirm abundance while feeling fear. They speak words of success while harboring deep conviction of failure. They're trying to paint over rust without removing it first. The words must be backed by conviction, not hope, not wishful thinking, conviction. Here's how you build that conviction. You start with the small things. You practice on something that doesn't have your entire ego wrapped around it. You speak the word for a parking space, for a smooth conversation, for finding something you lost. You train yourself to expect the law to work. And when it does, and it will, your faith grows. Your conviction deepens. Then you can tackle the bigger things. I had a student who couldn't believe she could manifest a happy marriage. So I told her, start smaller. Speak the word for harmony in one conversation with your husband today. She did. The conversation went beautifully. The next day another. Within a month, the entire relationship had transformed. She didn't try to change him. She changed her word. She changed her expectation. And the entire situation rearranged itself to match her inner conviction. That's how precise this law is. That's how responsive the universe becomes when we stop insisting on how and simply claim the outcome. You see, most of us pray with one hand and push away with the other. We ask for abundance, then say, I can't afford that. We ask for love, then say, no one ever stays. We ask for healing, then rehearse our symptoms to everyone who will listen. And the universe, it can only say, your word is law. As you speak, so shall it be. I once knew a man who was desperate for employment. He had been turned down so many times that rejection had become his identity. Every morning he would say, I'll probably get rejected again today. And he did, over and over. The very thing he feared, he called into being. I said to him, stop declaring your defeat before you even begin. Speak only of your success. See yourself employed. Feel the relief of that paycheck. Thank God for the perfect position that is already yours in the invisible. He resisted at first. It felt dishonest to him, like lying. But desperation finally made him willing. He began to say, I give thanks for my perfect work in my perfect way for perfect pay. He said it in the morning. He said it before interviews. He said it until it became more real to him than his bank account. Within 2 weeks, a position opened that hadn't even been advertised. Someone recommended him. The interview felt easy, natural. He was hired on the spot. Not because he was suddenly more qualified, but because he stopped expecting rejection and started accepting his good. The outer world had no choice but to conform. Now, let me be very clear about something, because this is where people stumble. This is not about pretending. This is not about denial. This is not about pasting a smile over your pain and calling it faith. This is about shifting the very foundation of your inner conversation. It's about catching yourself in the act of creation and choosing differently. When you hear yourself say, I always mess this up, stop. Reframe. Say instead, I am divinely guided in all I do. When you hear yourself say, nothing ever works out for me, stop. Rewrite. Say instead, everything is always working out for my highest good. When you catch yourself whispering, I'm not good enough, pause. Breathe. Rewrite. Say instead, I am perfectly equipped for everything that is mine. You see, your subconscious mind is like a faithful servant. It doesn't argue. It doesn't judge. It simply says, yes, master, and goes to work making real whatever you've declared as truth. If you say, I never have enough money, your subconscious nods and creates experiences of lack. If you say, I always attract exactly what I need when I need it, your subconscious nods just as eagerly and opens channels of abundance. This is why the ancient texts tell us to be careful of our words. They are not returning to us void. They are seeds planted in the fertile soil of infinite possibility, and they will produce a harvest of their own kind. I once knew a woman who couldn't understand why she remained sick despite expensive treatments and dedicated doctors. When I listened to her speak, the mystery solved itself. Every sentence was an affirmation of illness. My weak constitution has always plagued me. I come from a family of invalids. I suppose I'm just not meant to be healthy. She was writing her own prescription for continued suffering, renewing it with every breath. I gently suggested she change her inner dialogue. Instead of rehearsing her symptoms, she began to declare, divine perfection is expressing through every cell of my body. I am vibrantly, radiantly whole. The shift didn't happen overnight. Old patterns don't surrender easily. But as she persisted in her new language, her outer world began to shift. Within months, she reported feeling better than she had in years. The doctors called it spontaneous improvement. I called it demonstration. The universe doesn't respond to your desperation. It responds to your declaration. It doesn't hear your pleading. It hears your position. When you say, I hope things get better, you're announcing your current reality of things being inadequate. When you say, all things are working together for my good right now, you're standing in a completely different universe, one where support, not struggle, is the governing principle. The difference between these two statements isn't cosmetic. It's structural. One keeps you bound to the evidence of your senses. The other aligns you with the invisible architecture that governs outcomes. And here's what most people miss. The invisible always precedes the visible. Always. The thought comes before the thing. The word comes before the form. What you cannot yet see with your physical eyes is already present in the realm of cause. Your work is not to create it. Your work is to align with it, to call it forth with the authority of one who knows. I've watched people transform their entire experience by changing a single phrase. Not because the phrase was magic, but because the phrase reflected a shift in their inner position. A woman once told me she had been affirming for weeks. I'm trying to feel abundant. And I said to her, there's your problem. You're trying. Trying is the language of effort without faith. It's striving without arrival. She changed her statement to, I am abundance expressing itself through me. And within days, opportunities began appearing that had been invisible to her before. Not because the universe suddenly noticed her, but because she finally matched the frequency of what she had been asking for. You see, the subconscious mind doesn't recognize effort. It recognizes identity. It doesn't respond to your struggle. It responds to your claim. When you say, I am, you give your subconscious a direct order. You announce what is to be impressed upon the invisible substance that surrounds you. And that substance is obedient. It doesn't argue. It doesn't question your worthiness. It simply takes the shape of the word you've spoken with conviction. This is why I tell you to stop explaining your lack. Stop rehearsing the reasons why things haven't worked. Every time you do, you're giving your subconscious a blueprint for more of the same. Instead, speak from the place you wish to occupy. Describe the life you intend to live as though it is already yours. Not because you're pretending, but because in the realm of truth it already is. Your words are not wishes. They are assignments given to the infinite intelligence that governs all things. Every statement you make carries the weight of command. When you say, I am, you are not hoping or requesting. You are declaring. You are legislating in the invisible realm. And the visible world has no choice but to conform. This is why you must guard your tongue as you would guard your treasures. The moment you say, I can't afford it, you have instructed your subconscious mind to close the channels of supply. When you say, I always get sick in winter, you have written the script for your body to follow. These are not innocent remarks. They are orders. Consider the woman who constantly said, I never get what I want. She wondered why every desire seemed to slip through her fingers at the last moment. The answer was simple. She had trained her subconscious mind to sabotage her good. Her habitual words had become her habitual experience. When she learned to say instead, my good now comes to me in avalanches of abundance, her entire life rearranged itself. Opportunities appeared. Gifts arrived. Doors opened where there had been only walls. You see, your subconscious mind does not argue with you. It does not question whether you are speaking truth or falsehood. It simply says, yes, master, and proceeds to manifest whatever you have spoken. It is the perfect servant, but it is a servant that takes every word literally. This is both the danger and the opportunity. If you speak defeat, defeat becomes your experience. If you speak victory, victory becomes your reality. The subconscious mind makes no moral judgments. It does not protect you from your own words. It only fulfills them with absolute fidelity. So you must become deliberate. You must become intentional. You must catch yourself in the act of speaking limitation and immediately reverse it. When you hear yourself say, this is too hard, stop. Replace it with, I am divinely equipped for everything that comes my way. When you say, nothing ever works out for me, stop again. Say instead, Everything in my life works together for my highest good. First, this will feel awkward. Your logical mind will protest. It will say, but that's not true. Look at your circumstances. This is the test. This is where you prove whether you are ruled by appearances or by truth. And I say to you, persist. Persist with the same gentle firmness you would use with a child who insists monsters live under the bed. You don't argue with the child's fear. You simply turn on the light. Your word is that light. When your mind shows you the bank account, speak your word. When it replays the doctor's diagnosis, speak your word. When it presents evidence of lack, limitation, or impossibility, speak your word. Not with desperation, not with force, but with the calm authority of one who knows. I once knew a woman who had been estranged from her daughter for 7 years. 7 years of silence, of birthdays uncelebrated, of holidays spent in heartbreak. Her mind presented her with an endless catalog of reasons why reconciliation was impossible. Too much time had passed. Too many words had been spoken that couldn't be taken back. The daughter had moved across the country. She had remarried. She had built a new life that didn't include her mother. Every single fact was true and every single fact was irrelevant. This woman came to me and I taught her to speak her word. Not a word of pleading or manipulation. Not a word designed to change her daughter's mind. Simply a word of truth. Divine love through me now dissolves every seeming barrier between my daughter and me. Perfect understanding exists between us. She spoke it morning and night. She spoke it when her mind showed her the silent telephone. She spoke it when Mother's Day arrived without a card. She spoke it when mutual friends reported that her daughter had no intention of reconciling. And do you know what happened? 3 months later, on a Tuesday afternoon, with no warning whatsoever, her daughter appeared at her door. She simply said, "I don't know why, but I had to come." The woman asked me later, "Did my words make her come?" And I said, "No, your words didn't change her. Your words changed the invisible structure of reality itself. They dissolved the barrier that existed not in space but in consciousness. And when that barrier dissolved, the physical manifestation, the reconciliation, became inevitable. This is how creation works. Not from outside in but from inside out. You are not trying to manipulate matter. You are not pushing against resistance. You are speaking into the invisible substance that becomes all visible form. You are impressing upon the universal mind a new pattern. And that mind, being perfect and obedient, produces it in your experience. This is why your word has such tremendous power when spoken with conviction and joy. The universe does not distinguish between idle chatter and deliberate decree, but you do. And when you consciously choose words that align with your desired reality, when you speak them with the full weight of your belief behind them, you activate the law with precision and speed. I have seen people transform their entire financial situation simply by changing what they habitually say about money. Instead of, "I can't afford it," they begin to say, "Money flows to me easily and constantly." Instead of, "I'm always broke," they declare, "I am a magnet for prosperity." And they do not say these things once. They say them daily with feeling, until the words become more real to them than their current circumstances. And here is what happens. The universe, which has no choice but to respond to your mental and verbal impressions, begins to rearrange circumstances to match your new declaration. Opportunities appear. Unexpected checks arrive. Ideas come that lead to income. The channels open because you have opened them with your word. This is not fantasy. This is spiritual law in operation. Your subconscious mind is also listening to every word you speak. It does not argue or judge. It simply accepts what you tell it as true and works day and night to make your outer world reflect your inner convictions. If you constantly tell it you are tired, it will create fatigue. If you tell it you are energized and strong, it will vitalize your body. Your subconscious is your faithful servant, but it can only serve the orders you give it. So, become aware of the orders you are giving. Listen to yourself throughout the day. What are you saying about your health, your relationships, your finances, your future? Are your words building the life you want? Or are they reinforcing the life you no longer desire? If you catch yourself speaking lack, limitation, or fear, stop immediately. Do not berate yourself. Simply correct the statement. Say instead what you wish to be true. Speak the desired outcome as though it is already done. This is not lying. This is aligning with a higher truth. The truth of what is possible.